polyester uniforms, right? There you go, especially if they'll light on fire. Well, just in a new Rasmussen poll showing a lot of voters remain unsatisfied with the current crop of Republican candidates running for president. And here are the numbers that we just got in. 43% of those polled think it would be better for the GOP if a brand new candidate jumped into the race. 36% say the four candidates running are the best options for the Republican Party. Independent pollster Scott Rasmussen is president of RasmussenReports.com. So, Scott, some context for this. Tell us how this question figures in if we look at it compared to a couple months ago or even compared to other races.
Well, it's interesting. If you go back a couple of months, only 34% said it would be good for somebody new to jump in. So there's been a 9-point increase, but it didn't come from the Republicans. In this poll, 32% of Republican voters say that it'd be nice if somebody new would jump in, but most say, nope, the existing candidates are just fine. And if you went back to January, only 33% of Republicans were looking for somebody new. So I think what this is telling us is, there's still some dissatisfaction with the field. They look at the candidates and they like a little bit of candidate A and a little bit of candidate B, but nobody's quite got the whole package yet. My suspicion is that when a nominee is selected, almost all Republicans will unite, if not for a candidate, then against President Obama.
Have you noticed this trend at all with any previous races, runs for the White House, that at March, before the November election, that there's still kind of these numbers we're seeing asking for another candidate? I know you say they haven't changed much, but I'm just curious how it compares to other races.
Well, it's hard to do much of a comparison because it's only been in recent years that we've been this far into the process by March. When Ronald Reagan ran, he was just getting started in New Hampshire at this point in time. But what we do see is something very similar to the situation the Democrats had in 2008. At that time, there were a lot of concerns, not necessarily for a new candidate, but a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters were unhappy with Barack Obama as the leader, and they were saying, we're not sure we can support him in the general election. But when all was said and done, they came around and supported the Democratic nominee.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that's an interesting race to look at if we're looking maybe for a model, but it's tough to make those comparisons, as you so rightly point out. Now, you asked also...
And Jenna,
sure.
Jenna, I think it's really important to note while there's some similarities, in both cases there was a presumptive front runner. In the Democratic case, the presumptive front runner Hillary Clinton was behind at this point in time. Mitt Romney is still ahead. So there is a pretty different dynamic than we saw 4 years ago.
Thank you for pointing that out to us. As we look ahead to some of the races in the South, that's going to be interesting to see how the front-runner status, stays or changes. But as we've been hearing from the reporters for the last hour or so, we're still calling Mitt Romney the front runner at this time when we look at the delegates. Now, you also asked some questions about the economy as well, and these are just fresh off the presses. You just released these at noon Eastern time, and there's a few very interesting questions you asked, but this one really caught our eye. Do you consider yourself, you were asking the people that you polled, wealthy, upper middle class, or poor? And you can see here that 6 out of 10 of those responding said that they consider themselves middle class. Now, we talk about the middle class and how that figures into the election. Just tell us how you see these numbers as you're watching them come in, Scott.
The first thing to recognize is that everybody wants to put a dollar figure around what is the middle class, and that's not the way that people see themselves. In fact, among people who earn more than $100,000 a year, 45% of them think they're middle class. There's even 1% who earn more than $100,000 a year who classify themselves as poor. So something is going on here in terms of their attitudes and the way they see people around them. Second thing is we note that in almost all of the survey data, there is a concern among people who either fit the definition or consider themselves middle class that the politicians aren't connecting with them, that something is missing. And this is a group that Barack Obama struggled with 4 years ago in his primary against Hillary Clinton. It's a group that Mitt Romney is struggling with in his primary competition against Rick Santorum, Newt Gingrich, and Ron Paul. And it's possible we'll have two candidates, neither of whom really connect with that 59% who say they're the middle class.
That's interesting. So a moving definition for what defines the middle class, but still tough identifying with that group as well when we look at the candidates. Scott, thank you so much. We appreciate the first look at these polls.
Jenna.
Look forward to having you back. Thank you.